My name is Isabella. The night my marriage collapsed did not begin with shouting. It began with a gift, and with a single sentence that echoed louder than any fight ever could. For weeks I had planned the moment. Daniel, my husband of 10 years, had admired a leatherband watch in a shop window downtown. Not flashy, not ostentatious, quiet elegance, a piece that suited him. I wanted it to symbolize us. Steady, enduring, faithful. I returned to the shop twice, asked about engraving, finally paid with my own card. Inside the case, beneath the velvet lining, the words were etched. Always with you. I imagined the scene 100 times. A private dinner with friends and family gathered in our honor. Laughter, music, speeches. Then the gift presented. Daniel's smile as he opened it. The warmth in his eyes as he spoke my name before everyone. A reminder that love, even after storms, could still be celebrated. The restaurant hall glowed like a jewel that night. Chandeliers spilled golden light onto white linens. A pianist in the corner played softly, weaving the evening together with quiet grace. Guests filled the long table. Our parents, our siblings, colleagues from Daniel's office, old friends from mine. The air was rich with the scent of roasted meats and sweet wine. I wore a navy gown that brushed the floor, my mother's pearls at my throat. It was supposed to be a perfect evening. And then Chloe walked in. She was one of Daniel's colleagues, introduced to me months earlier at a work function. Younger than me, stylish in a calculated way, always too close to Daniel in photos. I had brushed aside whispers, convinced myself she was harmless. But that night she arrived in white. Not cream. Not ivory. White, sharp, deliberate, dazzling. Heads turned as she entered, and she smiled as though she had planned for it. I tried to ignore the knot in my chest. I focused on the clinking of glasses, on the stories being shared. I told myself she was just another guest. But the truth was already in motion. After the main course, a waiter rolled out a tray. On it sat a box wrapped in dark paper with a silk ribbon. The box I had purchased, the one I had hidden near the cake earlier. My breath caught. This was the moment. My moment. Daniel rose from his seat, the box in his hands. He smiled widely, his voice warm as he turned not to me, but to Chloe. "Thank you, Chloe," he said. "You always know me better than anyone." Applause erupted. Chairs scraped as people clapped and cheered. My aunt leaned toward me and whispered, "Such a thoughtful friend. How lucky Daniel is." My face stayed still, but inside me something cracked like glass under weight. Chloe pressed her hand against her heart, pretending surprise. "Oh, Daniel, it's nothing," she said sweetly, though her eyes glimmered with triumph. Daniel kissed her cheek. She fastened the watch around his wrist, slow enough for everyone to see. He lifted his arm to display it, basking in the admiration. And me? I sat motionless, my smile faint, my heart pounding in my ears. That was my gift. My engraving. My money. In my purse, folded neatly, sat the receipt. Date, time, item, my card number printed in black. Proof. The pianist's melody swelled, but I barely heard it. My mind roared with the silence of betrayal. I could have spoken then. I could have shouted across the room. "That is mine." But something steadier than rage whispered in me. "Not now. Do not waste the truth in noise. Let the lie rise tall enough to be seen. Then cut it down." So I raised my glass when others toasted. I even nodded when my uncle said, "Chloe always was thoughtful." My lips touched the rim, but I did not drink. I was memorizing. Recording. Every smile, every clap, every approving glance. Evidence. During dessert, Daniel told a story about our first apartment, embellishing details until it sounded like a fairy tale. Chloe laughed at all the right moments, her hand brushing his arm as though she had lived that life with him. The watch gleamed against his wrist like a crown he had stolen. I excused myself to the restroom. In the mirror I saw a woman still composed. Hair perfect, pearls glowing, dress unwrinkled. But my eyes had changed. They were no longer soft. No longer pleading. They were sharp, clear, awake. I opened my purse and touched the folded receipt. Thin paper. Ordinary. Yet heavier than stone. In that moment it was no longer just a slip of proof. It was a weapon. When I returned, Chloe lingered by Daniel's side. Guests teased them lightly, laughing about how well she knows him. Daniel laughed too, not once correcting them. Not once turning toward me. I sat down quietly, my smile polite. And inside I made a vow. I would not scream. I would not cry. I would not beg for dignity I already possessed. I would gather. I would wait. And when the time was right, I would raise the receipt, not as paper but as a blade. Because she had taken credit for my gift. And he had let her. But soon the credit would return to me. And the shame would be hers. The morning after the dinner, the house felt hollow. Daniel moved around the kitchen humming, as if nothing unusual had happened the night before. He poured coffee, kissed my temple and spoke about deadlines at work. My body reacted out of habit, nodding, answering softly, but my eyes stayed locked on the watch shining against his wrist. My watch. My gift. Chloe's stolen credit. Each time his hand rose to sip coffee, the leather band whispered betrayal. I replayed the moment again and again. The applause, Chloe's feigned modesty, Daniel's words. You always know me better than anyone. They looped in my head until my skin prickled with heat. 10 years of marriage reduced to one sentence that belonged to another woman. At lunch, texts began arriving. Friends who had attended the dinner sent messages like daggers disguised as flowers. Chloe is such a sweetheart. She knows Daniel so well. You're lucky to have friends like her. Each word drove the truth deeper. No one suspected. To them, Chloe was generous, Daniel was blessed, and I was the lucky wife with a thoughtful friend. They applauded a performance while I sat with the script in my purse. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. He carried a bag of takeout and set it on the counter as if nothing weighed on him. I thought you'd like a break from cooking, he said, smiling. He asked if I wanted to watch a film. He asked if I was tired. He asked everything but the one thing that mattered. How I felt after Chloe stole my gift. When he went upstairs to shower, I checked his jacket pocket. The faint scent of Chloe's perfume clung to the fabric, sweet and sharp, not mine. Inside, I found a folded napkin with a phone number written in looping script. No name. But I didn't need one. I took a photo, returned it to his pocket, and slipped back into the kitchen before the water stopped running. The next day I followed him. Not close enough to be seen, just enough to trace his pattern. He left his office at noon, claiming lunch with clients. I parked across the street from a cafe and waited. Minutes later, Chloe appeared. She walked straight to his table. They sat side by side, not across from each other. His arm brushed hers. She leaned into his shoulder when she laughed. He touched her hand as though it was natural. I raised my phone and snapped a photo through the window. Blurry but clear enough. His gray suit, her white coat, their bodies angled together like a secret. My pulse raced but my hands were steady. Proof number 1. That night, I cooked dinner and set the table as if nothing had changed. Daniel ate, spoke about traffic, mentioned a meeting tomorrow. I nodded, my phone in my lap, the photo already uploaded to a hidden folder online. When he reached for my hand after dessert, I let him hold it. He didn't notice how cold my fingers were. Later, when he fell asleep, I unlocked his phone. The code hadn't changed, he still believed I was too trusting to check. I scrolled through his messages. Some were hidden under a contact named Tom. But the words weren't written for a man. Last night was perfect. Every time I see the watch, I think of you. You always make me feel alive. I screenshot them all, forwarding each to my secret email. My heart pounded as I read the line about the watch. My gift. My engraving. And now, his proof of devotion to her. I lay in bed with the phone clutched against my chest, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly beside me. I whispered words he could not hear. I see you. I see everything. And soon so will they. The darkness held me steady. The truth no longer frightened me. It fueled me. The receipt was no longer alone. Now I had the napkin, the cafe photo, the messages. A foundation was forming. Daniel dreamed peacefully, convinced he was safe. But I was awake, and the silence between us had already shifted. The morning after I read those messages, I sat at the kitchen table with a fresh binder I had pulled from the closet. It was meant for recipes years ago, but tonight it would serve another purpose. I slid the receipt into the first plastic sleeve, then the photo of the napkin, then the cafe image of Daniel and Chloe leaning into each other. Finally, I printed the screenshots of the texts and arranged them neatly. The binder was thin, but it already felt heavy. Not heavy with paper, heavy with truth. From then on I moved carefully. Each smile I gave Daniel was calculated. Each word I spoke was measured. He thought I was the same trusting wife. But underneath I was watching, collecting, preserving. Patterns emerged quickly. On Mondays he always worked late. On Wednesdays he always left the office at noon. Fridays he claimed networking events. I followed when I could, never too close but close enough to see. One Wednesday I parked across from a bookstore. Through the wide glass windows I saw him and Chloe at a table, a book spread between them. Their heads bent close, shoulders brushing. I snapped several photos. Later I matched the timestamp with a charge on our joint account. 2 cappuccinos paid with his card. I printed both and added them to the binder. On a Friday night, Daniel texted me that he'd be home late. I checked his location using the GPS tracker Michael had once given me, just in case. The blinking dot sat not at an office or hotel, but at a boutique near the river. The next day I checked our account. $200 for miscellaneous expense. That same evening, Chloe walked into a charity dinner wearing a new necklace, shining under the chandeliers. I saved the account record, printed a photo from the event's website, and filed them side by side. The binder grew thicker. Its spine creaked when I closed it. Each page was a blade, sharp and undeniable. I created a hidden folder online. Every document, every screenshot, every receipt was uploaded there. If Daniel ever discovered the binder, the truth would still live in the cloud, untouchable. At night, while he scribbled in his notebook or watched television, I rehearsed silence. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't confront. Rage can be dismissed. Proof cannot. And yet, I needed more than documents. I needed people who had noticed, who could stand beside me when the moment came. That's when I began listening to the whispers at gatherings. At a cousin's birthday, my aunt leaned in. "That colleague of Daniel's, Chloe. She's bold, isn't she? Did you see how she hovered at the anniversary dinner?" Her tone carried suspicion, though softened by politeness. I smiled faintly, filed her words in my memory. Another witness, even if she didn't realize it yet. At church, an old friend told me she had seen Daniel and Chloe near the river one afternoon. I thought it was business, but they looked comfortable. I didn't react. I only nodded. Later I wrote it down, timestamped the conversation, slipped it into the binder. Still, the clearest proof remained the watch. It gleamed on Daniel's wrist like a trophy, a symbol of his betrayal. Every time I saw it, my pulse hardened. I photographed it one night while he slept, the engraving visible inside the band. "Always with you." My words. My promise. Twisted into their lie. By the end of the month, the binder was no longer thin. It bulged with receipts, photos, and notes. When I held it in my lap, it felt like holding a living thing. I sat at the table one evening, running my hand across its cover. I whispered to myself, "This is not a suspicion anymore. This is a case. And soon it will be a sentence." Daniel walked in just then, loosening his tie. "What are you working on?" he asked casually. "Recipes," I said, sliding the binder closed with a smile. He chuckled, kissed my cheek, and poured himself a drink. He never suspected that his downfall sat inches away, labeled and organized like ingredients. That night, I tucked the binder between cookbooks on the shelf. My hand lingered on its spine. It was almost ready. But I wasn't. Not yet. Truth is heavy. Once dropped, it cannot be lifted back. I needed allies. I needed a stage. I needed the perfect moment. And until then, I would keep gathering. The binder sat heavier on the shelf each day. I could feel its presence even when I wasn't looking at it, like a heartbeat hidden behind the cookbooks. I knew the truth was ready, but I wasn't. Not yet. To carry it into the open, I needed others. People I could trust to steady me when the storm finally broke. The first person I called was Claire. She had been my best friend since college, the one who knew the difference between my polite smile and my real one. When she arrived, I didn't waste time with tea or pleasantries. I pulled the binder from its hiding place, laid it on the table, and slid it across to her. She opened it slowly. Page after page, her face shifted. First disbelief, then anger, then sorrow. By the time she reached the photos of the lake house and the screenshots of the texts, her hands were trembling. She closed the binder with care, as if it might break if she wasn't gentle. "Isabella," she whispered. This isn't just betrayal. This is cruelty. He didn't just cheat. He let her humiliate you in front of everyone. He let her wear your crown. I nodded. My throat was tight, but my voice was steady. I needed someone else to see it, to know I'm not imagining it. Her eyes burned. You're not. And when the time comes, I'll stand beside you. Whatever you need. Her words anchored me. For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. The second person I told was my sister, Eva. She was quieter than Claire, more cautious, but her loyalty was unshakable. I invited her for coffee one morning and handed her a smaller folder, a distilled version of the binder. She read in silence, her eyes narrowing with each page. When she finished, she pushed the papers back toward me. You're right to be careful. But you can't do this alone. Tell me where and when, and I'll be there. She hesitated, then added softly, I always wondered about Chloe. The way Daniel looked at her. I should have said something sooner. You couldn't have known, I said gently. But now we both do. Her hand covered mine across the table. Then we'll make sure everyone else does too. Still, loyalty and family weren't enough. I needed law. I needed precision. That week, I booked an appointment with Evelyn Carter, a lawyer known for dismantling betrayals cleanly, without spectacle. Her office was sleek, her gaze sharper than glass. I laid the binder before her and told her everything. She examined each page, her pen tapping lightly against her pad. When she closed the binder, she looked at me with cool certainty. You already have more than enough to file. Financial misuse, infidelity, public humiliation. Legally, your case is strong. I can draft the divorce papers today. The word divorce sat between us like a stone, heavy, final. Not yet, I said quietly. He thrives on applause. I want him unmasked where he feels strongest. Only then will I leave. Evelyn studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Then gather carefully. Guard your proof. When you're ready, I'll strike with you. The law will finish what you begin. I left her office with her card in my pocket, its weight reassuring. That night, Daniel slipped into bed beside me, humming, the watch gleaming in the dark. He kissed my shoulder and whispered, You always know me. I lay still, my mind replaying the faces of Claire, Eva, Evelyn. Allies. Witnesses. Protectors. The binder was no longer mine alone. Its weight was shared now, spread across hands that would not let it drop. And as I drifted into sleep, I whispered to myself, The stage is coming. And when it does, he won't be the only one standing on it. Once my allies stood with me, the fear that had lived inside me began to shrink. Pain still pulsed in my chest, but it no longer drowned me, it sharpened me. For the first time I could see the road forward. Daniel, blind in his arrogance, gave me the opening himself. One evening over dinner he announced, The charity gala is in 3 weeks. They've asked me to give the keynote. His tone carried pride as though he had been crowned. He looked at me across the table, smiling. Wear something stunning. You'll make me look like the man everyone admires. I smiled faintly, hiding the fire that rose in me. Yes, Daniel, I thought. I'll be there. And you'll look like the man you truly are. That night I called Claire and Eva. This is it, I told them. The gala is his stage. And it will become his downfall. Together we laid out the counterplan. Step 1, the core proof. Evelyn reminded me that simplicity was strongest. You already have a mountain of evidence, she said. But people get lost in details. Lead with the receipt. That one slip of paper reveals everything. Her false credit, his silent betrayal. After that, if you need to, show more. But begin with the simplest truth. I touched the folded receipt, its edges worn from my fingers. This will be the blade, I whispered. Step 2. Technical support. Claire offered to create a digital slideshow. The receipt scanned and enlarged, followed by screenshots, photos, and bank statements. I'll prepare it all, she said, her determination fierce. All you'll need to do is give me the signal. One press and the room will see everything. Eva agreed to help as backup. If the projector failed, she would have printed copies ready in envelopes, tucked into her clutch. We won't let him escape with words, she promised. Everyone will leave with proof in their hands. Step 3, security. Michael, my brother, insisted on joining, though his temper made me hesitate. You'll need someone to stand near the equipment, he argued. What if he tries to shut it down? What if Chloe interferes? His jaw was set, his eyes blazing. I sighed then agreed. But no fists, Michael, I warned. This isn't about bruises. It's about truth. He nodded reluctantly. Step 4, the delivery. We debated long into the night about how the truth should be revealed. Claire thought I should interrupt mid-speech. Eva worried that would look emotional rather than deliberate. Evelyn reminded us that calm destroys lies better than rage. You must stand there composed, Isabella, she said firmly. Let the facts speak. You are the voice of reason. He is the noise. I practiced in the mirror. Not speeches, just sentences. Clear, sharp lines. That gift was mine. Here is the receipt. The truth cannot be rewritten. I trained my face to remain steady, my voice to stay low but carry. No tears. No shouting. Only the weight of truth. Step 5, the timing. Daniel always built to a grand finale. He loved applause, the sound of people rising for him. That would be the moment I struck, just when he believed the room was his. Claire would start the slideshow, Eva would stand ready with the envelopes, and I would rise, the receipt in my hand. The plan grew more precise with each meeting. We rehearsed signals. A nod, a lifted glass, a hand resting on the table. Claire practiced syncing the slides. Eva tested the projector cables. Michael memorized exits and outlets. Evelyn prepared divorce papers and letters to Daniel's donors, ready to be filed the morning after. Every detail was sharpened, every piece aligned. The night before the gala, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The binder lay open before me, pages spread like wings. I lifted the receipt from its sleeve, held it in my hands and studied the print. Date, time, store, my name, the truth captured in ink. I closed my eyes and imagined the hall. The chandeliers, the applause, Daniel's triumphant smile. And then the silence as I lifted the receipt. The shift in the air as the lie crumbled. The shame blooming on Chloe's face. Daniel came home late, humming, his tie loose, his eyes tired. He kissed my cheek and said, "Tomorrow's the start of something big for us." I smiled faintly. "Yes," I said softly. "Bigger than you know." He laughed, oblivious, and poured himself a drink. I tucked the receipt into a slim envelope and placed it in my purse. My hand lingered on it, feeling its weight. Tomorrow the stage would be his. And tomorrow I would take it from him. The night of the gala arrived wrapped in chandeliers and expectation. From the moment I stepped out of the car, I felt the weight of the plan pressing against me like a second skin. My emerald dress shimmered under the lights, my purse clutched close to my side. Inside it, the envelope with the receipt waited, small and sharp, ready to end a decade of lies. The ballroom glowed with gold. Waiters glided between tables with champagne, the air alive with polite laughter and music. Colleagues, donors, and old friends filled the room. And at the center of it all, Daniel stood like a king, shaking hands, flashing his easy smile, his watch gleaming on his wrist. My watch. My gift. Chloe's false triumph. When his eyes met mine, he smiled as though nothing separated us. "You look perfect," he said, kissing my cheek. "Exactly what I wanted by my side tonight." Not tonight, I thought, returning the smile. Tonight you will see who truly stands at your side. I scanned the room. Claire was at the back with her laptop hidden behind a program booklet, fingers poised to trigger the slideshow. Eva sat near the aisle with envelopes tucked neatly in her clutch, printed copies of the receipt and photos, insurance against technical failure. Michael stood near the sound booth, arms crossed, his presence like a shield. And Evelyn was not far, observing with her sharp gaze, her phone ready to send the papers when the time came. We were ready. The speeches began. Donors thanked the audience, committees praised Daniel's dedication. The applause built like a tide, steady and eager. My fingers brushed the envelope inside my purse, steadying myself with its crisp edges. Soon, finally, the host's voice rang out. "And now to close our evening, the man whose words and vision have inspired us all. Please welcome Daniel Hale." Thunderous applause filled the hall. Daniel rose, adjusted his tie, and walked to the podium as though the night itself belonged to him. He began smoothly, thanking donors, praising colleagues, weaving stories with practiced charm. The crowd leaned forward, nodding, smiling, drinking in every word. My pulse quickened. Claire glanced at me, waiting for the signal. Eva adjusted her clutch, ready. But then I saw her. Chloe. She had slipped into the third row without my noticing. Dressed in white again, bold and deliberate, as if she meant to mock me. Her eyes glowed with quiet triumph as she locked her gaze on Daniel. My stomach tightened. We had not prepared for this. Daniel saw her too. His voice faltered for half a second, then grew stronger, brighter, as though her presence fueled him. He raised his wrist slightly, letting the watch gleam in the lights. Subtle but enough. And then he looked directly at her before continuing. The crowd noticed the gesture. Whispers began in the rows nearest the front. A few donors glanced between Chloe and me, confusion flickering across their faces. Claire's eyes widened. She mouthed, "Now?" I hesitated. The plan was meant to land at the climax, but Chloe's smirk burned into me like acid. She had sabotaged my anniversary dinner. Was she about to sabotage this? And then, just as Daniel's speech swelled toward its peak, the projector flickered once, twice, and died. The screen behind him went black. Claire bent over her laptop, panic in her eyes. She tapped keys, checked cables. Nothing. The connection was gone. Michael sprang into action, crouching near the cords. His jaw tightened. He glanced toward the aisle where Chloe sat, her smile spreading wider. My heart pounded. Had she done this? Had she slipped in early, cut the power, bribed someone? Daniel kept speaking, oblivious. In life, he said, we are measured not only by our work but by those who inspire us. Tonight, I dedicate this speech to the people who truly know me. His words were a knife aimed at both of us. The audience erupted in warm applause, believing him sincere. My chance was slipping, my proof trapped inside a dead machine. Claire shook her head, mouthing, "It's gone." Eva's hand brushed her clutch, signaling that the envelopes were ready. But passing them out now, without the drama of the screen, would look desperate. I gripped the envelope inside my purse. My hand trembled, not with fear but with fury. I had built a stage of precision, a net of details, and in an instant the trap had been weakened. Chloe leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, victorious. Daniel's words soared, the applause growing. And I sat frozen, knowing I had only moments to choose. Improvise and risk chaos, or let the night end with his lie standing tall. The applause rolled through the ballroom like thunder, lifting Daniel higher, feeding his arrogance. He stood at the podium, smiling as if the night were his coronation. Behind him, the projector screen remained black. My careful plan, slides, images, undeniable proof was gone. Claire shook her head from the back of the hall. Eva touched her clutch, waiting for a sign. Michael glared toward the cords, his fists tight. And Chloe reclined in her chair, her white dress glowing under the chandeliers, her lips curved into a triumphant smile. For a heartbeat, I felt the plan slipping through my fingers. Months of patience, pages of evidence, allies waiting, and all I had left was the thin envelope in my purse. But then clarity struck. Sometimes the smallest proof cuts the deepest. Sometimes one slip of paper is louder than an entire slideshow. I rose from my chair. The scrape of wood against marble cut through the applause. The room hushed, dozens of heads turning toward me. Daniel froze mid-sentence, his smile flickering. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady, carrying across the hall. "You forgot something." A ripple moved through the audience. Nervous chuckles, curious murmurs. I walked down the aisle slowly, each step deliberate, heels tapping like a metronome. My purse swung lightly at my side, the envelope within it sharp as a blade. Daniel's voice cracked into the microphone. "Isabella, what are you?" I climbed the small steps to the stage and stood beside him. His face was pale, his eyes darting between me and the crowd. I turned toward the audience and pulled the envelope free. Inside, the receipt waited. I unfolded it carefully, the sound of paper tearing silence apart. "This," I said, holding it up, "is the proof of the gift my husband let another woman claim as hers. The watch on his wrist, the one he thanked Chloe for, was bought by me. Paid with my card. Engraved with my words. Here is the receipt. Date. Time. Store. My name printed in black and white." Gasps erupted. A donor near the front whispered, "I remember. He thanked Chloe." Another nodded. Whispers spread like fire. Daniel stammered, his hand reaching for the microphone. That's not, she misunderstood. I cut him off, my voice calm, sharp. I misunderstood nothing. He let her wear my crown. He let her steal my moment. And he smiled while she did it. I turned toward Chloe, locking eyes with her. And you wore white to my anniversary as if you were the bride. You wore my gift as if it were yours. But tonight everyone knows the truth. The hall fell silent, every gaze locked on us. Then slowly someone began to clap. One sharp, deliberate clap. It was Claire standing tall at the back. Michael joined, his hands striking like thunder. The sound grew, measured applause, not adoration but judgment. Chloe's smile shattered. She rose from her seat, her voice high and brittle. She's lying. Daniel told me. But the audience cut her off with murmurs of disapproval. We saw you, one woman hissed. We heard him thank you. Daniel's mask crumbled. Sweat beaded at his temple, his words collapsing into fragments. Please, this isn't. I raised the receipt higher. The truth doesn't tremble. Lies do. The applause swelled heavier now, pressing down on Daniel. He staggered back from the podium, his eyes wild, searching for escape. I folded the receipt and slipped it back into the envelope. My voice dropped, but the microphone carried it clear. This is enough. Proof speaks louder than performance. And tonight, performance is all he has left. The room erupted, not with cheers, but with the collective weight of judgment. People turned in their chairs, some rising to leave, others shaking their heads. Daniel stood abandoned in his own spotlight, the watch on his wrist gleaming like a brand of shame. I stepped down from the stage, my heels steady, my heart calm. Claire caught my eye, nodding proudly. Eva clutched her envelope, no longer needed. Michael straightened, his jaw unclenching. And Chloe? She sat frozen, her dress no longer dazzling but glaring, harsh under the lights. The applause that filled the ballroom was not the kind Daniel craved. It was not admiration. It was judgment. Each deliberate clap felt like a hammer striking down, heavy with meaning. I returned to my seat, sliding the envelope back into my purse, my head held high. The air around me buzzed with murmurs, sharp whispers passing from row to row. Daniel remained frozen at the podium, his mouth opening and closing, no words finding him. Then the voices began to rise. She bought the gift. I saw him thank Chloe, myself. And he let us all applaud the lie. The tide turned quickly. A donor in the front row, an older man with silver hair, stood slowly. His voice carried across the room. Daniel, I've supported you for years. I believed in your work, in your words. But now I see nothing but deceit. How dare you humiliate your wife in public and worse, pretend another woman's theft was generosity. Gasps and nods rippled through the crowd. Chloe shot to her feet, her face pale, her voice shrill. This is ridiculous. She's jealous. She's twisting everything. Daniel loves me, not her. Her words silenced the room, but not in the way she hoped. The guests stared, their disapproval thick and suffocating. Someone whispered loudly, "Loves her? Then why hide it behind Isabella's name all this time?" A woman in the second row shook her head. "Shameless," she muttered, her disgust plain. Daniel finally moved, his hand gripping the podium as if it could steady him. "Please," he said hoarsely, "this is not what it looks like. I made mistakes, yes, but nothing," a voice cut in. It was Evelyn. She had risen quietly from her seat, her presence commanding. "Mistakes are private. This was deliberate. You let another woman take your wife's place and then expected the world to applaud. That is not a mistake. That is cruelty." The audience murmured their agreement, louder this time. Daniel's face flushed. He turned toward Chloe, searching for support, but she was already shaking her head, stepping away from the stage. Her mask cracked fully now. "She's insane," Chloe muttered, pointing at me. "All of you are fools. Daniel, say something." But Daniel's voice faltered, his confidence shattered. "Chloe, please, not here." Her eyes widened, betrayal flashing. "Not here? After everything I gave up for you?" She turned on her heel and stormed toward the exit, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. The doors slammed behind her, the sound echoing like a gavel. The hall was left with Daniel alone under the lights, his watch glinting like a brand of shame. People began to rise, some quietly leaving, others shaking their heads openly. One man muttered as he passed, "Words mean nothing when the life behind them is a lie." A woman followed saying, "I can't support someone who would treat his wife this way." Claire stood from the back and began clapping again. Not loud but steady, her gaze fixed on me. The sound was not applause for Daniel. It was for the truth. Michael joined her, his hands striking like thunder. More guests followed, turning their judgment into deliberate rhythm. Daniel staggered down from the podium, moving toward me. His face was pale, his eyes wide, desperate. "Isabella, please," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Why would you do this to me here in front of everyone?" I stood slowly, meeting his eyes with calm strength. "Because you did it to me first. You let her wear my crown. You let her take credit for my gift. You made me invisible. Tonight I gave the truth back its voice." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. His arm fell limp at his side. The audience watched in silence, every gaze heavy with condemnation. The host of the evening hurried forward, his face pale. He cleared his throat into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our program. Thank you for attending." His voice cracked with unease. The chandeliers still glowed, but the room felt darker, heavy with the weight of what had been exposed. Daniel slumped near the podium, abandoned, humiliated. I turned, my allies beside me. Claire's smile was fierce. Eva's eyes glistened with pride. Michael's arm hovered protectively near my shoulder. Evelyn simply nodded, her expression calm, knowing her part would come tomorrow. I did not look back as I walked out of the hall. I didn't need to. The silence behind me said enough. The morning after the gala, the world felt strangely still. I woke to sunlight spilling across the curtains, my body heavy but my chest lighter than it had been in months. The silence in the house was not hollow anymore. It was peaceful, almost sacred. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. Messages, emails, missed calls. I scrolled through a few before setting it down. Guests had filmed pieces of the confrontation. The clip of me holding up the receipt had already gone viral in our community. Comments poured beneath it. "She exposed him with paper," iconic. "Imagine letting your mistress take credit for your wife's gift. She handled it with class." "Calm is the loudest revenge." Claire called first. "You were extraordinary, Isabella. Do you realize what you've done? You turned his greatest stage into his downfall." Her laughter rang through the phone like sunlight breaking clouds. Eva came by before lunch. She carried coffee and pastries, wrapping me in a hug that lingered. "I've never been prouder of you," she whispered. "You didn't just stand up for yourself. You showed every woman in that room what strength looks like." Michael arrived soon after, pacing the kitchen like a restless lion. "If he tries to show his face here, call me. I touched his arm gently. "You don't need to fight him. His own lies already did." But Daniel wasn't finished trying. That afternoon there was a knock at the door. I opened it only a crack. He stood there, wrinkled suit, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled. The watch still clung to his wrist, but it looked heavy now, like a shackle. "Isabella," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "Please. You destroyed me last night." Everyone's turning away. My colleagues, the donors, even Chloe won't answer my calls. I've lost everything. You're all I have left. I held the door, my expression calm. "You lost me long before last night, Daniel. You lost me when you handed my gift to another woman and smiled while she wore my place." His eyes glistened. "It was a mistake. I was weak. But I love you. 10 years, we can't throw that away." I shook my head. "You threw it away when you chose humiliation over honesty. I'm not what you have left. I'm what you lost." I closed the door gently. His muffled sob followed. Then the sound of his footsteps retreating down the walk. That evening I met with Evelyn at her office. She slid a stack of documents across the desk. "The divorce papers are ready," she said firmly. "You'll receive restitution for the money he diverted. The evidence speaks for itself. He has no ground to fight you." I signed with a steady hand. My signature curved across the page like a bridge to freedom. When I returned home, I brewed tea and sat by the window. Outside, the world moved on. Children on bicycles, neighbors chatting, the golden glow of a sunset stretching across the sky. For the first time in a long while, I felt aligned with the world again. Daniel's empire of charm had collapsed in a single night. Chloe had vanished into silence, her white dress a memory of shame. And I was free. The binder still sat on the shelf, but it no longer felt heavy. It wasn't a cage anymore. It was proof of my endurance, my patience, my refusal to vanish. I raised my cup, whispering to the empty room. To truth. To freedom. To choosing myself. The weeks after the gala unfolded like the slow clearing of a storm. At first, the air still buzzed with the echoes of broken glass, rumors, texts, messages from people who had seen or heard what happened. But slowly the noise faded. What remained was silence, not hollow but alive. A silence I could finally breathe in. The divorce went through quickly. Evelyn handled it with precision. Daniel didn't fight hard, he couldn't. The evidence was stacked too neatly, the witnesses too many. The funds he had wasted on Chloe were repaid. The house came to me. The watch, once a symbol of my pain, was turned over in the settlement. I sold it and donated the money to a shelter for women starting over. Turning betrayal into refuge felt like closing a circle. Daniel tried for a while to claw his way back. He sent messages, letters, voicemails. Some were dripping with regret, others with blame. I didn't answer a single one. I boxed them all and labeled it the past. That's where they belonged. Chloe vanished quickly. Whispers said she moved to another city, clinging to a new fresh start. She left nothing behind but the memory of her white dress at my anniversary, and the echo of her humiliation when she stormed out of the gala. As for me, I began to reclaim myself. I repainted the kitchen a bright yellow, letting light fill corners that had once felt heavy. I joined a book club, not because I needed new friends, but because I wanted to hear my own laughter again. Surrounded by people who had no idea of the pain I once carried. I traveled with Eva for a weekend by the sea, where I walked barefoot on the sand and realized how strong my steps had become. The binder still sits on my shelf, but it is no longer a burden. It is a monument. Each page a reminder of what I endured, what I uncovered, and how I chose to rise. Sometimes I take it down, not to relive the pain, but to remind myself that patience, clarity, and truth are stronger than deception. One evening, Claire asked me if I regretted not leaving sooner. I told her no, because waiting gave me power. If I had stormed out the night of the anniversary dinner, I would have left in chaos, my dignity questioned. By waiting, by gathering, by building my case, I didn't just leave, I reclaimed. The greatest revenge was not rage. It was calm. It was truth spoken steadily in front of every person who had once applauded a lie. It was choosing myself when Daniel and Chloe expected me to vanish. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see not the woman who sat silent at a dinner while another wore her crown. I see the woman who lifted a single receipt and turned it into a sword. So if you're listening to my story now, remember this. Betrayal is not the end of your life. It is a fork in the road. You can scream and shatter, or you can gather and strike. You can let the lie grow until it collapses under the weight of the truth. Do not let anyone erase you. Do not let anyone hand your crown to another. When the time comes, speak with clarity. Speak with calm. Because proof, no matter how small, is louder than any lie. I raise my glass now, not to anniversaries, not to gifts, not to men who build their pride on stolen credit. I raise it to freedom, to truth, to the strength of silence waiting for the right moment to roar. This was my story, and now it is finished. But yours, it is still being written.